Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Barry Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I have an exciting show for today for a few reasons. One is that I'm pleased to say that Vizsla Silver has joined my sponsorship program, which will enable me to do a lot of content related to Vizsla. I am very bullish on silver, but what I struggle to do is to be able to find a lot of great silver stories. And what I in Vizsla Silver, I believe that they have one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting, silver development and exploration play in the business. And one of the key reasons that I say that is that their preliminary economic assessment has a 85% IRR, a very fast payback of the capital. And whatever metal you look at, that is incredible. There really are not many projects out there like that. So I'm really excited to have them on as a sponsor and be able to do a lot of content. And Michael, I want to thank you for becoming a sponsor and look forward to a bunch of shows because I think you guys have a tremendous story.
Well, thank you, Alan, very much. We're excited to be sponsors and excited to tell our story with you.
Well, not only is it a remarkable story based on the IRR and the fast payback, but the exploration part, like this is an incredible project for exploration alone, let alone with a tremendous preliminary economic assessment with that fabulous IRR.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing about the project is, if you were to just section off just the PEA area, that's going to be a top five silver equivalent producer globally, just on its own. And certainly there's going to be new discoveries once we get underground there, once we, drill even closer to the existing veins like Copala and Napoleon. So, the potential for new discoveries just in the West alone is huge. Now, if you zoom out from just that PEA area in the West, we have two other distinct areas of new discovery across the district. Each of those have, a number. I mean, we have hundreds of exploration targets that we've never explored yet. So, there's really two stories. One is the development story, and then the other is this unparalleled exploration story, which I think is just absolutely incredible.
And Michael, as you're describing that for your audience that comes on to watch this thing, I'd let them know that I live in Mexico, have for the last 7 years, and I live in the state of Zacatecas, which 10% of the silver ever produced worldwide has come from Zacatecas state. And in particular, in the state of Zacatecas is the city of Fresnillo. Now, Fresnillo was a cluster of epithermal veins that spans about 1.5 kilometers by about 1.5 kilometers. That's been in production for over 400 years. And then in the last few decades, right beside that, they found the Saucito cluster of epithermal veins, which has helped Fresnillo PLC to be one of the the lowest cost producer of silver in the business. The second one is right next to that, which is Mag Silver and their Juanicipio project. All of this is a series of a cluster of epithermal veins found in close proximity that could actually be is similar in size. You could fit that into your projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And the production history of the Panuco Copala area, which is the district that we have, also dates back 400 years, so 450 years. Actually, the same conquistador Francisco de Ibarra discovered Fresnillo and discovered the city of Durango, and then he finally discovered the Copala and Panuco district, which we have today. So it shares not only the potential scope and size there, but the same history. So I think that's pretty interesting. But certainly we look at this not like a typical precious metals. Uh, sorry,
You
someone's.
got people ringing you, you
We
got
do, we
people
do.
knocking on your door.
Exactly. 1 second here.
Okay, no worries, Michael. So, as Michael was saying there, he just has to take a brief moment to deal with his phone calls and his knocking on his door. But as I was mentioning, that cluster around the city of Fresnillo is incredible. Not just because of the long mine life, but how high grade it is, and the low costs of production. And as I said, that makes Fresnillo PLC and also Mag Silver the two lowest cost producers in the world. And Panuco has a lot of similarities. I was just filling in some time, Michael, by telling people about the high grades and low costs in that Fresnillo area, and how that is the same story over at Panuco, which is halfway in between Durango and Mazatlan. And Durango is maybe an hour and a half from Fresnillo. So you're talking about a radius of 150 miles or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's all within, generally the same silver belt, which is kind of like the super highway for silver. And, you have, the majority, well, Mexico is the number one silver producing country in the world. It has been for a number of years. I think that's going to continue. And it's because of the, strange coincidence that all of these big districts are located there. It's unique in that sense. So, what you're talking about, the Fresnillo district, the Durango area, even San Dimas, about 80 kilometers to the north of us, which is really a direct analog to what we have in terms of geology, in terms of, the genesis of the metal, in terms of the same style of veins, and it'll be typical, mining that you see there from compared to comparing Panuco to San Dimas. So, the nature of what we have here, compares very favorably to some of the biggest silver districts in Mexico. And, we're thrilled to be a part
Which
of
makes it the best in the world.
exactly. And we're thrilled to be part of the modern history of it, and it goes back to, how we came about this project. And there was a number of even Canadian prospectors that were spending time in Mazatlan and then going up into the Sierra Madres. And of course, it wasn't very hard to come across this project. It literally sits off the side of the highway. There's mills off the side of the highway. There's, veins. You can see the history of mining in this region. But a group of Canadians were able to, make interface and start working with the Mexican private property owners. We were able to come in there and work with those Canadian prospectors. If we fast forward a year, I spent about a year there in 2019, from the beginning of 2019 to effectively the end of 2019, working to piece this district together by acquiring the two halves. And as a result, we're the first company in modern history to have those two halves consolidated. Even before us, there was many different landholders, and it was just this kind of mess of dozens of different landholders that were consolidated basically in the years of the 90s until the mid 2000s. And as a result, we're the first company to have this entire district to systematically explore, and that's what we've been doing. And because of that, we found some just absolutely incredible discoveries, like Napoleon. Napoleon was the first big discovery that we came across, and that was I think that was about 6 meters of 8 kilos silver equivalent on the discovery hole. We were able to raise $30 million on the back of that. That was in 2020. And from that point on, we've been drilling, very aggressively across this district. And short time thereafter discovering Napoleon, we made the discovery of Copala. And that was basically a blind discovery. We were drilling into another vein, but taking a pretty far step back to get the right angle. And basically subsurface, we started to intersect this vein and it kept going. It was about 80 meters, 82 meters to be exact. And we thought, what the heck? This doesn't make any sense. The vein's supposed to be way over here. We're drilling through the structure, and the result of that, it was over 250 grams silver equivalent over the entire 82 meters.
Oh,
Some pulses were in the 10 kilo range, something like that. We thought,
wow.
well, this is bizarre because we weren't expecting to come across this structure, certainly while drilling into tajitos. And so we continued to drill outside of that from that collar up and down along strike there. And now what we have is a mile long structure called Copala. I mean, that's the resource area is a mile, but it's certainly longer than that to the north. It starts to peter out a little bit to the south. But if you look to the north, it should should continue and keep going. And now this Copala vein is, incredibly rich. It's probably the richest new discovery in Mexico, probably even the silver industry in many decades here. It's just spectacular. And it's Simon, our COO, and I like to joke that it's like God put it there and meant for it to be mined because it's off the side of a highway. The highest grade area is near
I
surface.
want to get into that, Michael, but I'm going to interrupt you because you brought up something that I don't think a lot of people really realize about epithermal vein clusters. And I want to talk about that a little bit, which is a lot of times the veins in the Sierra Madres or any cluster of epithermal veins, they won't make their way all the way to the surface. And sometimes it's those blind veins that can be incredible. Going back to the Fresnillo area, Mag Silver's Juanicipio and Valdecanas veins are both blind veins. But you go 50 miles up the road, and there's two veins that were called Milagros. And these were parallel veins, very high grade. I think it was one of the Mexican majors were mining there, and they cut a tunnel from one vein to connect it to the other vein because they were starting to get closer together. When they cut that, they found a blind vein that if you put it in today's terms, it would be worth like $50,000 a ton. And the only way you find them is by drilling them or cutting across with a tunnel. And I've actually had some experience drilling into a cluster, and it started out as only two veins. And so, knowing what I know about exploration of these veins, when we go through a vein, and in your case, you got the blind one prior to getting into the vein, but sometimes if you go through the vein and you still see alteration, keep going. And that's how we found actually a cluster of epithermal veins with about 20 of them all blind veins. So, that untapped part of what doesn't show its daylight is equally as exciting as what you already have found in daylighting veins.
Well, absolutely, and many of these structures at our district do daylight, but oftentimes they actually don't, and we use historic workings basically to vector into old workings. Sometimes that works, but of course, in the case of Copala, we didn't find any old workings. That was a true blind discovery, and speaking about the Valdecañas discovery, our VPX Jesus Velador was on the Fresnillo side of that discovery, so opposite of Peter McGaw, and we do have Peter McGaw as a technical advisor to Vizsla as well. So we have a wealth of experience finding these blind structures in a district like ours. So it's pretty exciting. I love, our exploration is certainly within our DNA at Vizsla. It's a big part of who we are, and of course, we have the right team that's taking the project, the PEA, which we call project number one, forward. And, we're test mining later this year. And the development of the project is all under the guidance of Simon Smirlick, who's probably the best person on earth to drive this forward here. He's built 42 mines for Ausenco in his career, and the last one he built was Las Chispas. So great experience there with Simon. But
And for my
just to go.
viewers that aren't aware, Ausenco is one of the best at optimizing mines. So to have one of their ex guys as part of your team, I think that is something that should be highly noted because, as you said, 42 mines experience, is something that not many, even big mining companies can say. And you have that in a junior silver developer.
Well, and exactly. And Simon, certainly could have had his pick of any job he wanted after they sold Ausenco earlier this year. But he'd been a director of Vizsla for years and a mentor of mine for years. So it made sense for him to come over here to Vizsla. And so I say all this because we certainly have the leadership, the experience on the mine development side. That's incredible. Jesus Velador is a world class tier one discoverer, really, of veins and resources like ours here. He actually has his PhD in epithermal vein systems in Mexico, so kind of a perfect fit for the job. But that's what makes Vizsla so exciting here. And there's been two recent transactions I think that are important. You can look at Coeur just acquiring Las Chispas and Silvercrest, as well as Gatos and First Majestic. And if you look at the multiples that those companies received, it's between 6 or 7 for Silvercrest, up to about 15 and 16 times EBITDA for Gatos. So if you look at these multiples that they received for their cash flow, it's not hard to see Vizsla Silver's project number one, that PEA, which is going to do about $300 million in free cash flow in the first year, be a multiple from here. So, that's without that exploration upside. That's without the huge amount of exploration upside that we have just on our original map. But then when you peel back the onion a little bit and start to really understand, what this is, which is, the potential to be even a multi-hundred year district, like, the history has shown before with these big Mexican silver districts, it gets very, very exciting. So, we're thrilled about that. This is going to be a really big year for us coming ahead in 2025. But before the year's done, we're going to have a resource update primarily out of Copala, where that infill drilling has just been incredible. We're going to start our test mine later this year. All that's moving into feasibility study in the second half of next year. So it's going to be a really exciting time for Vizsla and our shareholders.
Well, you brought something up there that I don't know how your management feels about this, but I'm going to express what I feel. And that is you brought up takeover, mergers and acquisitions activity. And Michael, I'm hopeful that you guys get the chance to bring this into production for a couple of reasons. One, I think that it will probably make you a much bigger company than getting taken over as a developer. But secondly, I see in the industry that, and this applies to gold, silver, and other commodities, that there is a dearth of mid-tier miners. And because there's not enough of those, which was a result of all the takeovers that happened between 2001 and 2011, it has created somewhat of a vacuum in that mid-tier, mid-tier miner category, that we actually need more of those in the business because they're the ones that can look at projects that are not big enough to move the needle for a major mining company, but they can be company makers for a mid-tier or a small miner, a junior miner that wants to grow into a mid-tier. And I see some amazing projects out there, Michael, and I think you could, jumpstart your company to be a miner that can then move into that junior, mid-tier, and maybe even bigger company. So I'm kind of a bit selfish in that regard because I think that this industry needs that more of that, Michael. And you guys have the perfect asset for it.
Well, and I agree with you. And I actually had a conversation earlier today where we talked about Great Bear, and they were very successful in running a takeover. And I thought about that a lot. Even before we published our initial resource, 3 or 4 years ago. You think about these things, and one of the unique aspects of Vizsla Silver that really can allow us to execute on what you just talked about, which is to become the next big thing in silver, the next big silver producer or precious metals producer. It's 60-40 silver gold. But it's the fact that we can build production here for a fraction of our market cap, for $224 million. So when you look at the typical precious metals developer, you look at a company like Skeena, you look at, a number of these projects out there, it's a big capex typically, certainly if you're in a place like Canada or
And a long development discount window.
exactly. Very long time, often very dilutive to equity shareholders. But we have over $110 million Canadian in the bank today. That takes care of a major part of the capex, at least the equity portion of the capex, because of the IRR and the payback period, and because of how great of a job Simon did on the PEA. It's really more of like a pre-feasibility study. We will be competitive in getting project finance, whether it's debt, well, likely it's debt, but also with equity too. So, the
But even
pathway
if
for us to
it's
go,
debt, the IRR would pay that back so rapidly. Silvercrest is a perfect example. They went 100 million into debt, and I think it was 2 or 3 full quarter commercial production full quarters. They paid off all of that debt.
well, at the metal prices that we use, which were the CIBC long-term pricing consensus, it was a 9-month payback. At today's prices, it's probably more like 6 months or perhaps even less. So, our payback period is very rapid. But all that to say is, there's a couple of things. One, there's a huge, like you said, a huge opportunity, a huge vacuum to become a meaningful silver producer and create a lot of value for the industry through that, but also just create a lot of value for shareholders. But the other aspect is, there's a ton of upside there that if we were to get taken over today, we certainly wouldn't get paid for, this district exploration. Even if, someone were to take over that western portion of the property, if you think about the multiples that, Gatos and the multiples that Silvercrest got on cash flow, we're still massively, massively undervalued just on that project number one. So if you extrapolate that across, to these potential discoveries and exploration upside, it's hard to really think that shareholders are going to get the amount of value that they should get for a project like this, were we to sell it in the near term. So, it certainly makes sense for us based on a PNAV multiple, based on returns for shareholders, to take this into production. And from there, it makes sense for us to continue to build and, grow organically. We can grow by building, new mills all throughout the district. We've got a big district where you could have multiple centers of production. You could be producing, as we are, the first 2 years, it'll be about 20 million ounces of silver equivalent production annually. I think that can probably increase as we make new discoveries and drill more, around Copala. But you could also have satellite zones doing 10 or 20 million ounces elsewhere too. So this could really be on the path to becoming one of the most meaningful silver producers just out of our original project map.
The rationale behind that end game that a lot of juniors want to follow is affected by a few things, Michael, that separates you from the herd. One is that the capex is often off the charts for a junior to develop it themselves. It's usually in a place where the development discount window can be a decade or longer. So taking the money early makes a lot of sense for other discoveries. But when you have such a low capex, such a high grade, low cost, huge IRR that would pay back the the capex with less than 9 months, you really are in a special situation. And then to consider that you could be looking at fast tracking this into production within a few years, you're not looking at that 10 to 15 year development discount window.
Well, exactly, and I think this is only bolstered by, and I've been saying this as well. Was of the opinion that the sentiment towards Mexico is going to improve with Claudia's appointment or her inauguration here. And what we've seen is that so far has been true. We looked at the 100 promises from her, and the open pit ban wasn't among that.
Out the
Exactly,
door.
it's out, which is great.
Yeah.
We've never considered an open pit project here. Of course, it's all been underground. This is going to be one of the great silver mines that won't be seen or heard, but except for the benefits to the community because of the location that we've chosen for the mill site. But this is a great opportunity. I think that Mexico is going to be open for business again, and we should be in a period of time here where permitting and building this project should be relatively unencumbered, and should be a speedy process. And with that in mind, we are targeting 2027 for first silver.
Wow. And I 100% agree with you on Claudia. Oftentimes I find, Michael, that investors, they look at the headline, in this case, the political rhetoric from AMLO, and they don't look beyond that as to what is the moving parts. And with Claudia, she's I think going to be more practical.
Mhm.
And I also think there's a couple other variables that people didn't look at. One was that if you ban open pit mining, you also ban other crucial minerals that are needed in the economy of Mexico. So I was kind of skeptical about that whole ban. I thought it was more about politics. And now that Claudia's in, I think she's going to be much more practical. But the second is that she's an environmental engineer. And if you want green energy, especially in Mexico, one of the best alternatives is solar. And if you're going to have solar energy, you need silver. And this is the best country in the world to get silver. So I think that moving part was not lost. It was lost beyond the headlines. And ultimately, I believe that nearshoring is going to be the crucial economic driver going into the future. So international players will be looking at what happens in this country, and mining has a way of getting into the newspapers. And if the miners aren't being treated fairly, some of those nearshoring opportunities might not come to fruition. So I think Claudia is looking at this whole chessboard, and I think she's going to be a really good thing for the economy of Mexico.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and it's something that we had a feeling about. We've had pretty good intel and a pretty good look at what was to come. So we were confident, but it's great to start to see this unfold here for other companies, and I am looking forward to seeing the first permits granted and these types of things. But it's going to be great for miners, I believe.
Okay, now the thing originally I started following your company and made it a pick years ago when you first made the discovery holes because the grades were so phenomenal. And lately, what has really excited me is that preliminary economic assessment. To get an 85% IRR is off the charts, no matter what metal you're looking at, no matter where you look in the world. And let's delve into a little bit of why this project has such a great IRR. And by the way, before you get into that, I'm going to steal that silver superhighway statement from you because really you got Panuco, you got Durango. There's another name that loses me, but there's another one. And then you go and you got Fresnillo, and then you got Zacatecas, and then you keep going north. And so you really are on a super highway, and I think that's gonna go into your answer about why that IRR is so exceptional.
Yeah, there's a few things, and I think I said earlier that Simon and I joked that this is like the vein that God put there and wanted us to mine because of its nature, right? It's wider and higher grade close to surface. Within 80 meters of surface, you have some of the highest grade areas on the property that we've found so far. I doubt it'll be the highest grade we ever find, but some extremely high grade material. It's only about 600 meters of development to get to that in the first place from surface. It's just a ramp down, and we're going to start doing that later this year. We're going to begin that process. So ideally what we'll have is 1 to 2 years of stockpile of very high grade material above surface to start. The capex of the mill is quite reasonable. So I guess going back to that, we have low mining costs because of the proximity of the material, the mineralized material to surface. So that cuts down on your mining capex. Now you also have very simple flow sheet that's been basically kind of replicated from other similar operations like Silvercrest, and you need to look at this from the terms of a business. Mills don't have to be extremely expensive if they're if they're kind of a typical conventional processing flow sheet. We're not spending a lot of money on roads because this is off the side of the road. We're not spending a ton of money on power because
Off
power
the
lines.
side of a highway. Sorry to interrupt you
Exactly.
there.
And the power lines run over top of the mill site. It's not to say that the power is just going to drop off the power line. There'll probably be a substation, but within 5 kilometers, that type of thing. So your capex, everything there is really quite manageable. And because of the high grade nature and because of our focus on margin and return on investment rather than just ounces produced, we focused on prioritizing the highest grade pieces first and capitalizing on that high grade material first. So our AISC is very low. In the first 2 years, it's about $7.20. Just incredible, very, very low cost, but serious production, 20+ million ounces annually. So, all of that really comes into play. And what that means is that the IRR is spectacular. And again, it's today based on, current prices, it would be about a triple digit IRR. It'd be more than a triple, be over 100% IRR, which is, spectacular. So, it's all about prioritizing return on investment for us. It's, one of the things that we wanted to focus on and have focused on is, running this like a business, not just, taking ounces out of the ground for the sake of taking ounces out of the ground. They need to be high margin. And fortunately, we have a project that allows us to do that.
And we could talk. I call the mine the big truth machine, but the little truth machine is the drill rig. And so you've got a fast track to getting to the big truth machine. I think it's all permitted, or you're mostly permitted. Did I get
Well,
that
the
right?
test mine is permitted. Yeah, exactly. So we were able to permit the test mine, which is, we've used disturbed areas, basically existing disturbed areas to permit that very quickly.
So, and then on the growth potential with the small truth machine, we could talk. I could talk to you endlessly about the widespread potential, but even looking at it from a on the veins known, you just had news out last week. And I know a lot of people, they don't pay attention to infill drilling. They want that big blue sky. But getting back to what you're saying about finding high grade, mineable, high margin ounces, you guys hit it out of the park with that infill drill. It exceeded quite significantly a lot of the holes around it. Did I get that right?
Exactly. And that's what gives us this confidence that, this will actually improve or at the very least not go backwards into the feasibility. We are expecting to update our resource before the end of the year. And, we've been targeting 200 million ounces in M&I. And I think that'll be, achievable. And I suspect that the grade may actually increase based on some of this excellent drilling. The other thing is that we actually, drilled outside of the resource envelope closer to surface. So we actually, with that infill drilling campaign, we actually moved the resource up towards surface.
Okay.
Which, again, going back to return on investment, the closer to surface it is, the better, right? It's, less development to get to the ore. So we're thrilled about that. It's really coming together in a way, that you really never see. It's just typically, right? These are all these things that you really only come across in world-class situations. And I think that's what we have here. It's shocking to us to see these continued high grades as well, because it's something that's so rare.
Yeah, and you're in good company there because it compares favorably to Mag Silver and Las Chispas. And Las Chispas is one of the best new mines that's come online over the last few years. And you got somewhat of a look-alike there. And that's very exciting. You've been very kind with your time, Michael. And what I wanted to talk about before we close things off is where exactly are you now with the drilling? Where have you been drilling? How much is pending? How much will be upcoming in the next 6 months to a year?
Well, the infill campaign is, we'll have a few more holes from that, but it's pretty much, released. But keep your eyes peeled for some more holes out of that. We should have a few more left, at the assay lab. But the exciting thing for me is going to be the 10,000 meter minimum campaign, throughout the district here. So we're mobilizing for that. We're going to drill somewhere that's outside of an area which we haven't drilled this area yet. We've come across the target called the San Dimas Camellia target. And essentially you have a, subvertical typical vein that you see, there's an orientation that you typically see in the district. It's north-south or generally north-south. And then we've been able to come across these high angle, flatter line, thicker structures. And that's what Copala is. They call them mantos. Historically they called them the mantos there, and there's the Colorado to the north of Copala. We suspect that may even be, there may be a series of them. So I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but in the west there's kind of a series of these flatter line, thicker, low angle structures, and one of them, which is off our map, has been mined for many years now, and it was the first thing we went underground and saw. And there was this seam basically of, high grade. We sampled it. It was, 8 kilo silver equivalent. It was just ridiculous. That's when we knew we had to have this project, basically. And then, the Colorado, which has been mined historically, was one of these manto structures as well. And then Copala is basically the biggest one that anyone's come across. And that's the one that we discovered that was blind. But we see something very similar, kind of in another parallel trend, basically, probably about 7 or 8 kilometers to the east and to the southeast of our map. And that's where we're going to start drilling there. That's going to be really interesting. So there's 2 targets, the vertical or subvertical, and then the flatter line structure that reminds us of potentially of Copala. And then beyond that, there's other targets to the north. And so we can start to see basically, we have project 1 with the PEA. We can start to see project 2, project 3, project 4, et cetera, going on throughout the district. And that's what this exploration program, the 10,000 meter program that we're going to start this year, but it'll probably continue into next year. Now that we have, we raised all that money, we have bigger budget for exploration as well. But I'm excited just to, let Jesus and team loose on the project and see what they can find.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. So a few holes left in the resource expansion, and then heading out looking for other
Yeah,
discoveries.
I wouldn't exactly call it wildcatting, but we're exploration drilling.
I don't mind the term wildcatting. A lot of great mines have been found here in Mexico doing just that. So on the developments towards the production, you're doing an underground bulk sample, and that's in anticipation of building up a stockpile for future mining. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the test mine is, that's part of it. It's to de-risk, effectively, it's to de-risk the startup of the mine from the startup of the mill. Oftentimes that can be where companies go wrong. They try to do both at the same time, and underground mining is difficult. So it's better for us to get out there, get our eyes and our hands on the project, on the vein, before it's critical. understand how it reconciles with our drilling, de-risk the underground basically through this test mine. But at the same time, we'll be bringing material above surface, and that acts as a stockpile, which also further de-risks the startup of the operation. So that's great. Something that we're permitted for, we're budgeted for. We expect to start it before the end of the year, and ideally that'll be. I mean, it will be the permanent entrance for the mine. So we're not
Oh,
expecting.
so you're not just stockpiling to prepare for the mill, you're also getting early access into the body, the epithermal
Exactly.
vein.
Yeah. And that's something that we've been permitted for. That's fully allowed to do. But ideally we get our full permit, our MIA, and then we continue mining basically from that permanent access going forward. So, we're permitted for 25,000 tons of that bulk sample, but really the goal is to, get a sense of the underground, but also, be able to reconcile what we've done in terms of surface drilling to what's underground.
You never know, there could be some nice surprises along the way in that regard as well.
Well, that's the thing that I'm secretly the most excited about because good things happen when you're underground in these types of systems.
Just there's a mine that I visited not far from here, and I swear the surface where it comes daylights is like this big. You go down 20 meters, and it blows out to like 15 meters. So you're looking at something that started like this and boom. And sometimes the only way you can figure that out is to get underground.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, there's count. I mean, on the Animus trend that runs effectively, well, northwest, and that's kind of the dominant structure where 100 and something million ounces of silver equivalent have been extracted over the last 120 years, 150 years. That has 7 ore chutes, and some of them are like ballrooms underground. It's enormous. You've never seen, it's just incredible. And the surface expression, as you say, is very small, or there's no surface expression. So we're thrilled to get underground there and see what. And then there's just so much more too. Like we were condemnation drilling for a mill site, and we discovered the El Molino vein, which we named after, of course.
That's
A nice
crazy.
4 meter vein at I think it was a kilo or something like that. So, anyways, there's structures everywhere, and when I'm excited to get underground, that's going to be a lot of fun.
So on the path to production, um, what are some of the milestones? You got a feasibility study coming out, this test bulk sample or test mining. What are some of the other not hurdles, but milestones along the way?
Well, I think hurdle is probably a great word for it, but there's a few, right? And the big one is the approval of the MIA. The MIA is the environmental impact permit, basically. That's going to be the major permit that allows everything else to get permitted, but it allows us really to progress, with underground mining, further than the bulk sample, but also from breaking ground with the mill site, and then all of the other auxiliary permits come off of that. And we're expecting to submit that MIA this year,
Oh,
and
wow.
ideally will be approved at some point next year. But what would be excellent would be if the MIA, the feasibility study, and project finance all lined up at some point in the second half of next year, and we were able basically to break ground. So, that's you know that those are our marching orders. That's what we're working towards. That's what the board and management team that we've all agreed on. So the big hurdle is, yes, the feasibility study is important. Of course, that allows us to access the project finance, although we're working with project finance groups as we move into the feasibility study, so they'll all be kind of up to date and aware of what we're doing. But I would say the kind of the critical item for us is that permit. And we've been confident about getting permits here. We've been permitted for 300 plus drill pads. We've been permitted for a test mine here. This is a old mining district. It's not a virgin forest. It's not a desert that needs a lot of water. It's a fairly wet area. Sometimes I say it's like building a warehouse in an industrial park. This is mining country in Mexico. So I don't want to be too
I've
cocky.
driven right by it. I know exactly what you mean, Michael.
we don't want to be overconfident or anything like that. It's still a challenge. Permitting certainly will be a challenge, but we've got a great team that's working on it. But that to me is the big hurdle. Getting that is very important, and I suspect that the feasibility study will be great. I know that Simon, Simon's the right person to handle that. Um, the project finance is moving along very nicely. So yeah, the permitting is the big one for us.
Well, you never know. I watched Ross Beatty a lot over his career, and he's gone into some areas that, transition from what was considered challenging to less challenging to open arms. And I think that there's that potential with Claudia. I think that she's going to be motivated to say, look, we're open for business for mining and for nearshoring. And what could be a better project in all of Mexico than what you guys are talking about? It could be a cornerstone, and it's an hour from a community that a lot of international visitors go to. It could be you could benefit from one of those motivated politicians that want to change the narrative.
Well, we certainly see that on the Sinaloa level as well. I think sadly Sinaloa has a reputation, that I think is, not necessarily fair, certainly for all areas, and the area that we're in, and the municipality that we're in, and the community of Mazatlan that's hosted us, and the communities that we're in that host us. We're very grateful to be a part of them. I want to personally, I want to see this mine be built and benefit these communities, because they've never really got to see the true benefit for the mineral endowment that they have here, because no one's ever been able to systematically explore for the project. No one's ever been able to make big discoveries here. And because of that, there's never been any real sustained investment to create a very large mining operation here. So I would love to see that. And we've shared that vision with the state of Sinaloa, and we have, great support on the state level. So I suspect that will all come together, and, we'll be able to create something very good for Mexico.
Something before we close off, Michael, something that I've always heard in this business, and I think I don't really understand it because I've seen the studies by companies like Newmont that say that, sometimes it's the sixth or seventh company on a project that actually finds a mine. But a lot of people say, well, if it's so good, why did you get it for so cheap? Actually, you didn't get it for so cheap. The guys that had it, they knew what they had.
Yeah, they threw out a number that they thought no one would ever be able to pay, and then I just kind of signed up for it, and I said, okay, well, we got to figure it out. That was pretty funny. I was probably just turned 30 years old, and I had probably, more balls than brains, I guess, and I just said, okay, well, we'll get it done. And we did. It was about 40, I guess it was what, $42 million US, but Vizsla Silver was at the time that we entered into the option agreement, we were probably a $12 million market cap company, Canadian. So we got laughed out of many offices when we'd show up and we'd talk about this district in Sinaloa, and oh, somehow the old timers missed it, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And people said, oh, how did you guys get it? It's like, well, don't worry, we've got a big payment at the end too. If that wasn't enough. But of course, the drill bit did the talking, and we've got the right team came around the project at the right time. We've been very, very fortunate, very blessed about that, and everything has in the right time worked out here. And I suspect that the next steps, the development of the project, will continue on that path. So, but you're right, we didn't get it for a steal. It was probably one of the bigger project
4x your capex, your 4x your capital, your
market cap.
valuation at the time of
Yeah.
acquisition.
Well, that way, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Wow. Michael, just like that topic I just brought up, is there ever any questions that you get that you kind of take a step back and think, well, I wish my shareholders knew that aspect better? Do you ever get into those kind of situations?
Well, sometimes we do. It happened a lot more, I'd say at the beginning, we're kind of telling the story of the startup of Vizsla Silver. And, I'm the founder of the company, so I love talking about that kind of stuff. But, these are kind of typically the conversations that you have, outside of a meeting at a conference, with someone that's just starting to get to know the story. But I think that's really, it's important to know that, myself and Craig Perry, our chairman, and Simon, a number of our other directors were all involved really early on. And this isn't a company that we were just hired to, to work at. And, we've got real strong connections and ties to this working out. And, at one point there, Craig and Simon tell the story better. Of course, they were front row seats for it. But my wife was pregnant with our first kid, and I was traveling back and forth to Mazatlan to do this deal. And I hadn't been, didn't have a job. This was my job, and I was running the company basically on my credit card, and wasn't until you know months after we kind of successfully raised money and moved the project forward that I was talking to Simon and Craig, and they say, what do you mean you haven't been paid yet? What do you mean you haven't paid your credit card off? What, we got it done. You can do that now. Okay. So, it's been a labor of love, from the early days. And so it's really, it's beautiful. It's exciting to see how this has all come together. And, our hopes is that this will be one of the world's great silver mines, and it'll be something that was, hard fought battle, which makes it even sweeter.
Well, a lot of people ask about skin in the game. What they don't ask about is sweat equity and blood and guts to get where you are. And I think you've talked a little bit about that at the end of the interview here, Michael. It's I've seen the sweat equity before, and sometimes that's more important than the skin in the game, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think they're both important, but it's yeah, no, it's been a great ride so far.
Do you have any closing comments?
No, it's just that it's going to be a very exciting year for Vizsla, and to anybody who's new to the story, please feel free to reach out to the company through our website or on our social media accounts. And we love to talk to shareholders and prospective shareholders and anybody that's interested. So, and if you made it this far, thank you for listening.
There's one thing that I know from the statistics of my back end, Michael, is that I may not have the largest audience, but I do have a very engaged and active audience and investors. And sometimes they watch 50 to 70% on average of
Wow.
the shows. So I like getting into it deep, and I also like that you guys are a sponsor and that we can keep talking about this as the story evolves, because I think it's going to evolve into a much bigger company.
Oh, that's very much appreciate that, and it's great to be working with you, Alan.
Awesome, Michael. I'm going to close it off. We can talk at the other end. So there you go, folks. In Vizsla Silver, it's not just about the project. To build a mine, you need the people as well, and you need the funding. And these things often happen part and parcel because good people are attracted to good projects, and funding is often attracted to good projects. But I was really happy that Michael really described the path, the efforts to build the company and the people involved. I made a comment earlier that this is a board of directors and a management team that much larger companies would be happy to have, and real serious experience in exploration and mine development. And I think that this is all the path to success for Vizsla. And however that end game plays out, I'm happy to be along for the ride here to talk about it as things evolve. And I have a lot of confidence that we're going to have a lot to talk about in the coming interviews. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, be aware that Vizsla is a sponsor, so they are helping me to create content for their benefit. But it is also a benefit for my audience because by having sponsors, enables me to put out the content that I do on other companies and on the sector itself. But do be aware of that bias and do your homework. And I think you'll understand why I'm so excited to have Vizsla on as a sponsor. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.